Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good evening. It is 10 o'clock p.m. here in Calgary, Alberta, Saturday night, August the 14th. And I just wanted to do a special show just dedicated to any child who's been abused ever and or will be. This is an intimate look at my book, A Life of Death, The Redemption. And I wanted to do this show. I've been thinking about it for a while. And tonight seemed to be the right night for it. It's not easy to talk about these things, as I do talk about them on my morning program, One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. But it's not easy to get into the headspace, the frame of mind that's sort of necessary to talk about this stuff as these memories, come back to me as flashbacks. And quite often, I still sort of suffer with a lot of flashbacks and these type of things, right? So, but just to be able to talk about it publicly and is another thing. So tonight seemed to be a good night for it, and I will be on for an hour. It's a live program, streaming from blogtalkradio.com. And the chat room is open if you'd like to sit in there. I don't know if I'm going to take callers tonight just because I really want to cover the whole thing in an hour. And I think if anybody was interested to do another talk where, people could call in and ask questions or make comments or whatever, that'd be great. If anybody's interested in doing that, you can just let me know. And I have a lot of dear friends who possibly might be joining me here tonight. So I did put the chat room up. And just happy to be able to do the show. I wanted to talk about this book, A Life of Death, The Redemption. This is something that I never dreamed would happen, and never dreamed in my wildest dreams, that my story would be made public and that I would actually be able to get my voice out there and to be a voice for those who do not have a voice, those children who have died at the hands of their parents and caregivers, and children who, over the, since time began have been losing their lives to abuse, and whether it's parents or, child sexual predators or whatnot. It's just, it's a real privilege, really, to be able to be a voice, just one more voice. And that's why I wanted to do this. And, I just wanted to discuss the book. I wanted to just chat a little bit about why I wrote it, how it came about. Just wanted to give some more insight into what was happening to me and my family as we're looking through the chapters, right? Excuse me. I want to personally thank Donna Shear and Sandra Potter. They are the people who are really responsible for this book. I wrote I wrote a public-facing blog last October. I started writing this blog. It took me till a couple of months to write my story, and I'd come home from work at night and sit down, and the chapters would just come, and they just flowed, and I didn't have to go back and re-edit. I would just post it that night, and that would be it. And that's how fast it would come to me, all this stuff, because it's my memories. It's part of my memories, right? And so writing it was not a problem because it was just factual to me, the truth, right? So, Donna Shears, she saw my blog, Not So Fond Memories, growing up in an abusive home, and on Blogger, and she said, your story is just so amazing. Like you should finish it first of all, because I still had a few chapters to finish. I wasn't done. And she said, you should finish it and then, publish it, and it should be out there for people. She really felt that, and Sandra Potter as well, felt that my book might be helpful to other people, survivors of child abuse who are still out there suffering, and just to know that, if they hang on and just keep holding on, don't give up, ever, ever, ever give up, they too can, find peace and find some sort of something that makes this life worth living, you know what I mean? And something that, to really give us a purposeful life, a meaningful life, to come from abuse, and come from really bad homes and bad situations and even domestic violence situations. There is life after abuse, and that's the whole issue. And I have learned, over the last, especially this last year, that, we can do this, just by talking to people, other survivors out there, and talking to therapists and counselors that I've actually been able to talk to, which has been great. Just by doing my blog talk shows, I've met quite a few people who are life counselors and therapists, and even though I don't attend therapy and I don't attend any counseling sessions, these people were very helpful to me, just even in the time that I spent with them, whether it was an hour or two. So, this is just it. I just want to be one more voice of hope for people, really, who are out there, who are suffering and still very much in that dark place. I was in that dark place about 3.5 years ago, and I was there my whole life. And the light, came on, and my life has changed forever. And I found peace. I found my peace. I found that life is good, and that people are good, and that there are good people out there, and that we can find this place, we can find this joy, we can find this happiness, and these relationships that we can build with people as adults, are so meaningful and so powerful. And so that's why I just want to encourage people to be sure and hold on. Don't ever give up. And I've had too many people tell me, over and over and over again, not to ever give up, right? And so that's what I'm telling you, not to ever give up. And so, it's just awesome. I'm just happy to be able to do this show. And so I have a caller. I'm gonna take this call real quick, and we'll see who it is. Area code 561. Hello.
Hello there. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Hi, I started the show, and I see it's on abusive relationships, and I've been out of a marriage for 8 years, been divorced, and was married to a very controlling, possessive husband, and still after we're divorced, it's unbelievable what I've had to go through in the past year with the court system, because he doesn't want to pay his child support, and he's still in the courts. He's not making any money in his company, and the courts have believed him to stop my child support. Now I've got to appeal the case, and I've been going to court without a lawyer, and he's got a lawyer, and it's been a disaster, and I haven't been able to get any legal assistance with legal aid, nobody.
That is so hard. And this is so sad, because this is what's happening to so many people. I mean, I know myself with what I do, advocating for human rights, child rights, women's rights, I see a lot of this stuff out here. I see a lot of people a lot of women who are in this position, no real assistance from people, no real help.
I can show you a whole box of paper from this court system. It's like we get beaten up by the legal system. Yeah. It's
so really, it's sad, it's tragic, and it shouldn't be happening. And that this is very, very sad. I know. It's got to change at some point. But it's until then. Look what people are having to deal with, like yourself and other people who are going through this. I actually know people right now who are going through this, and this type of thing, right? Where there's just no support, and they're just struggling.
They give criminals somebody to help represent them, but not a mother with children.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. That's very sad. Well, I'm doing a special show here tonight, and it's on a book, and it's on my book, and I've scheduled it special for this show. But I hope that you will, get a hold of me on Blog Talk Radio. Just send me a message, and just keep in touch and let me know how it's going. I might have, I'm not a legal advisor. I don't have any, legal contacts, but I do know of a lady who tries to help people. So if you want to, you can send me your information. Just message me here on Blog Talk Radio, and let me know how I can put you in touch with her, just to see if she has contacts that she can sort of pass your way, because she's fighting for this type of stuff. She's very much into the laws and into and she's an awesome lady. Susan Milano Murphy. I don't know if you've heard of her. She's a big time advocate, and she just, she might know of someone who can at least direct you and get you some help. You know what I mean? Like I myself don't know anybody. I'm not hooked up like with the, in that circle, but you could always try someone like that, because she definitely would know where you could go, right? Who you could talk to, and
I'm just doing everything myself. But then when I go to court, they make me feel like I'm like a 2-bit second-class citizen.
Yeah, and I think that's what her shows like. She does shows here on Blog Talk Radio too, and she's very much always talking about that stuff. And most, her main issue is the fact that women are not represented properly. They don't have the resources that they need and in these situations, right? So I'm going to go ahead and get back to my show because this is a special show that I actually scheduled for my book that I'm doing, and it's really just it's a dedication to all the child abuse survivors out there. And I'm just going to talk about my story and about my book and stuff. But be sure and get a hold of me and message me or whatever, and I'll try to get, sort of see if I can find somebody else that might have some info. You know what I mean?
Okay, because I'm in Florida. Where are you?
I'm up in Canada. But that's okay because online, you just never know. I know people all over the country. I know people all over the world, actually. So you just never know. There might be someone who knows of someone, you know what I mean? So I'll just pass the word. Just leave me your information if you want to as a message, and we'll do that.
Okay, where are you located? Where are you listed here now on the Blog Talk? Now I can't find you.
I'm on. It's www.blogtalkradio.com.
What's it under?
It's under Laurie Smith. That's my name, Laurie Smith. Laurie.
Oh, okay.
Smith. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Laurie.
All right. Oh, you bet. You have a good night, okay?
Bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, poor woman. That's terrible. This is what's happening to people out there, and this is what I actually know a couple of people right now who are kind of going through that type of thing, right? No support, no legal aid, no one to back them up, and they're in these horrible situations and trying to fight for their rights, which is exactly what I'm and a whole lot of other people are trying to speak out against, you know what I mean, and speak up for, is exactly this type of thing. But this show, I just really wanted to dedicate this show really to survivors of child abuse and to, anyone who's ever been abused ever, right? Because it's just so incredibly sad, you know what I mean? And we should not have had to deal with that. So my thanks go to Donna and Sandra, Donna Shear, she's the president of Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. Sandra Potter is the CEO and founder of Dreamcatchers for Abused Children because, they thought that my story should be published. It should be a book, and I just really, owe them a sort of an eternal debt of gratitude, and that's what I wrote there in my description of the show. It's something that I'll never forget. And their kindness, for doing this, right? And so all the profits are going to Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. That's what I wanted, and that's how the book came about. And why I wrote the book, I wrote the book. It started out as a public-facing blog, mainly because I didn't want to go to the grave with the truth, No, I knew no one in my family was going to speak out against what had happened. I knew that no one in my family was going to open up and publicly talk about what had happened to our family. I knew that my family members that remained, which there's only 4 of us left, no one would ever talk about it, and so all of this stuff would have happened, and no one would have known. And really what bothered me was that my 2 brothers went to their grave in shame and silence. One of my brothers was murdered when he was 19, and I talk about that in the book. And and 2 of my other brothers, which I talk about all the time, were, basically killed themselves. One committed suicide, and the other one died of a drug overdose. But, he knew what he was doing, and he had been, taking bags full of pills and just, basically doing a slow death type of thing, right? Just feeling that one day he would take enough pills and it would kill him. And so, very, very sad. I thought they went to their graves and no one knew what they suffered as children. And the people that did know just didn't care. And the people that did know still to this day do not care because they see what I'm doing. They know what I'm doing. There's certain people and individuals that have seen my work on Facebook and whatnot who knew our family situation, and I won't name names, but they still don't care. They don't come to me and they don't say, Laurie, I'm so sorry. We didn't realize what your mother was doing to you. We didn't, even if that was a lie and they did know and they just wanted to be untruthful about it, that would at least give me some sort of comfort, to know that they did care, but they don't care. They just cared about my mom and my dad, right? They just cared about our parents, our abusers, right? And so this is why I wrote my story. It wasn't out of revenge. It was out of just to get the truth out, because I thought, man, this is absolutely ridiculous. I do not want to go to my grave with this. And, the truth needs to be told. And so that's what we're talking about here tonight, which is the truth. And, it's very, very sad when people don't want to come to terms with the truth. I think the truth can be very painful, right? And so that's why this show can trigger people. My book can trigger people. It's the truth, and I didn't want to sugarcoat it. I didn't want to present it as, minimize it and say, oh, well, my mom was just disciplining me and she got carried away, and, try to make excuses for my parents. I just didn't, I wanted to just be as honest as possible when I wrote my blog, which got turned into the book. There was not much changed in the book. There was a few, grammatical errors that I had made with grammar and whatnot that Sandra Potter and Donna Shear corrected, and there was a few things that they did kind of want to just. They didn't change my words, though. They didn't change the story, because you can go back and you can read pretty much word for word that it's the same story. So I thank them so much for allowing my voice to be heard, allowing me to break the chains. Break the silence. Right? I mean, very awesome thing to do, and I would I recommend it for all survivors? I wouldn't even want to go there, because it's not necessarily something that all survivors of child abuse would want to do, to write their story or to write a public-facing blog, because with it comes the realization that you have to be ready to face all of it, and it's very painful to take a look at the whole thing, and sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming, and I knew at the time I was strong enough to do it, and years ago I don't think I would have been able to do it. I was very much just existing and not wanting to handle it and deal with it and look at it, the pain and misery that was caused by my parents, and now I knew that I was in a safe enough place, because the day I decided that I would not kill myself and that I would not self-injure and that I would fight to live, I knew at that point that I had gained the strength that I needed to face this, So, but I wouldn't, would I recommend everyone do it? Not necessarily. It's up to the individual, and it's up to the individual person who has been abused and who has suffered as a child, and, it's up to them whether they would choose to put their stuff out there publicly. And for me, I had to do it. I could no longer hold it in, and I wanted everybody to see it, because I wanted people to know what my family went through. I wanted people to know what I went through as a child, because people, would see me and they would not recognize the fact that I've been abused. I don't walk around with a T-shirt on saying, I've been abused, I was abused as a child. People see me in a whole different light. I'm able to work, I'm able to function, I'm able to hold down jobs, even when I was a drug user, a big-time drug user back when I was, 18, 19, 20 years old, I was still able to hold down jobs, 3 jobs, even doing the drugs and staying up all night. That's the whole issue. I was really doing a lot of damage to my body, but I mean, I could function, I could do my jobs, I can participate in life, thank God, because I know there's people out there that can't. And but the thing is it even with that going on, it's so hard on people. You know what I mean? So I think that it's up to the individual if they would choose to want to look at the truth and want to face this, and let other people into their pain and into their life, So this book can trigger, and my show here tonight can trigger. We've got about 40 minutes left, so I really just wanted to talk about, I didn't write this book out of revenge. A lot of people might think, well, she just wrote her story because she wanted to get back at her parents, and that didn't have anything to do with it. It wouldn't have done any good because my dad doesn't care. So he said it doesn't do any good. He knows about the book, and he just doesn't want to admit that he has had any part in it. He just lives in his own world, and that's okay. And my mom, she's gone. She's passed on. She passed away 15 years ago. So, she's just. I think she would be completely horrified if she saw that I had written this book. I think she would probably, if she was able to, try to beat me up. But, it's too late for that. She's already gone. So that's the whole issue. I didn't write it out of revenge. I loved my family very much. And that's the whole issue. I loved my parents. People ask me that quite often. They say, how could you love people that hurt you like that? How could you love your mom after she did what she did to you? And, that love it's a natural love from a child to a child has for their parent. And even though our parents are hurting us, if it's our parents or or a sibling or something, there's that love or something, there's that thing inside you that says, this is my parent, this is my mother, this is my father, this is my family. I do love them. I do care about them. Now, when I was young, I used to think I hated them, and I used to tell them to their face that I hated them. excuse me, not when I was really tiny, but when I was older. After I had realized that I wanted to hate them for what they had done to me and to my brothers and to themselves and to each other, I hated the life they created for us, but I wanted to hate them, and I thought that I did. And for many, many years I thought that I did. Then I had to stop and realize, that I didn't hate them, that I really loved my parents very much, and I just hated what they were doing. I hated what they had done to us, and it wasn't them that I hated, it was their actions, right? And it helped me to come to that realization, right? But I still had a lot of hatred in my heart for what had happened, and still carried a bit of anger, quite a bit of anger towards what had happened. And even today, if people would ask me, are you still angry? Are you still hurt? It's like, absolutely, yes, I am. I don't think this stuff ever goes away. It's not something you can replace. You can't replace, like no one can replace my childhood. No one can replace that for me. But I have to learn how to accept it. And then I have to learn how to nurture myself. And that's what I do a lot of talking about on One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. We have to learn how to realize that, hey, this stuff is not going to change. The past is the past. It's done. It's a done deal. What I can do now, what we can do as survivors, is change the way we feel about ourselves. Change the way that we feel about life, right? And my brothers couldn't do that. That's why they're not here today. You know what I mean? They don't have the opportunity to do that because they took their own lives. And so, 3.5 years ago, when I decided to fight to live instead of fight to die, I made that real clear choice to say, okay, I can't change what happened, but I can change the way that I feel about myself, and I can change the way that I feel about my life now. You know what I mean? I can choose to feel good. You know what I mean? And to love myself, nurture myself, and get all that stuff that I did not get as a child, right? And so that's why it is very, very important that people, keep that in mind if you have suffered this kind of stuff. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. I don't have any certificates in that area, like I say every show, right? And that's the truth. I'm just one person who's just speaking out the truth because it's so important, for people to know that we have to learn how to love ourselves. I hated myself. I had a lot of self-loathing for the feelings that I had, self-loathing for my own body, self-loathing for who I was, self-loathing for my family. I had a lot of self-loathing going on, hating myself, and of course it's very destructive. And it doesn't, and until you learn to love yourself, and learn to sort of reverse all that, right? And say, no, I love myself. I do. I love myself. I did not deserve that. The shame does not belong to me. You know what I mean? Until we realize that, we can't really move forward in our healing journey. And I think, when I started to actually do these self-affirmations, saying I do deserve to have a good life. I did not deserve that abuse. And because no one was telling me that, so I had to tell myself this, right? And I did not deserve that, and I deserved so much better, and I have to learn to love myself, and I have to learn to love that child who's sitting inside of me, who's very angry and very, feeling so unloved and so wanted, that inner child that's me. I had to learn how to hold her and how to hug her and how to be the mother to her that she never had. You know what I mean? So I had to do it myself, right? I don't think anybody can do that for us. Now, I don't know. Maybe for some people it's possible, but I could never find anyone that could do that for me. And I tried, believe you me. I mean, just about any friend who was sympathetic to my cause, I was hoping that they could take away my pain, that they could help me out, you know what I mean, and take away my pain. And I'd be like, I would sit on the couch and be like, why can no one take away my pain? It just seemed like someone would someday, somewhere, would be able to take it all away. And I think I was just wishful thinking, I was just hoping that would be the case, right? And so, it was very, very hard, right? So I didn't write the book out of revenge, and it was written mainly just to tell the truth and to help other survivors who have been out, who have been through this, and to just to let people know that, hey, I'm still here. I'm 45 years old. I could have killed myself so many years ago. I used to plan my suicides. I used to plan it. And I was so tempted and so close so many times. Now, thank God I never went through any of it because it would have been very, very fatal. because I wasn't into just popping a bunch of pills because that's what my brothers did and it would never work. I thought, okay, how can I make this final? I won't even go into the details of what I used to think that I would do, but one I do mention in the book, and that was to drive my car over the Grand Canyon, which I was actually planning on doing. Because people do that, how sad it truly is. And my God, I hope if you're out there listening to this right now that you're having these thoughts and you think that there's no hope for life, man, let me tell you what, I'm here to tell you that there is, and that you have to hang on with everything that you have. You know what I mean? Every ounce of strength that you have. Pull yourself along through that darkness until you start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, because there is a light at the end of the tunnel, I'll tell you that. That's the truth right there. You know what I mean? And would I believe this when I was 14 years old, 13 years old, sitting around my friend's home, hating my life and hating myself, didn't want to go home. I knew that when I went home I was just going to be abused again. Knew that going home my mom was just going to curse me and beat on me, and I'd have to fear for my life at night that my dad would come in and kill me, and it was horrible, absolutely horrible. Would I have believed there was ever a light at the end of the tunnel at that time? No. You know what I mean? This is what I'm here to tell you. Like so many years later, 37 years later, or however many years later, I'm here to say there is hope. There is a good life. We have to search it out. It's not going to land in our laps. We have to go and seek it. We have to seek that light, that truth, compassion, goodness, kindness, mercy, compassion, love. We have to nurture ourselves and take care of ourselves, and we have to hold on and keep going, right? So I wanted to kind of take a look. There was so much information that I couldn't put in the book. The book would have been like 50 trillion pages long. I kept it very simple. I just wanted to make a few points. I wanted to let people sort of know, because I talk a lot about child abuse. I'm fighting against child abuse, standing up to try to stop this mess. And a lot of times, you just can't get that personal on those shows, right, because of the topic information, and you're just not in that headspace. And that's why I wanted to do this show. I wanted to be able to point out how incredibly painful it is for people to have to suffer through this stuff, you know what I mean? And, the whole fact of the matter is so many years later, it's still not validated, you know what I mean? No one in my life that knew it was happening, or actually many of those people are gone now, but some of them, even though they're here, they don't validate it. They don't care. You know what I mean? And this is the whole issue. A lot of times we can't get the abuse that we suffered will not be validated, right? And so, we have to make peace with that. You know what I mean? It's very possible that none of my family members will stand up with me. It's very possible that friends of mine that knew about the abuse will not come forward, to validate it. And I had to be okay with that when I wrote this book. When I started putting out my blog and it went to the book, right? I knew that, and I said, what, doesn't matter to me, because truth is truth, and truth is everything. Like, if we don't have truth, we have absolutely nothing. You know what I mean? So to me, it didn't matter if the validation was there. It didn't matter. I was just like, it doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that my story gets told, because I want people to know what happened to me. And so that's why I wrote the book, and to help other people, just to see that they can do it. Hey, if I can sit here and I made it to the age of 45 and I don't do drugs and I don't drink, I'm off of that. I very much try to keep a nice stable life for myself, and I try to take care of myself. I'm learning how to do that. I had to teach myself that, and I'm still working on it. And, we can do this. I just want to be one more voice to say to others, we can do this. I just want to take a look, kind of go through a few, chapter by chapter. I started at chapter 1, how many fingers am I holding up? This was a very natural point for me to start this blog when I first started it. And that's because this family that intervened, they were the first people that ever validated my abuse. They were the first people. There was other people. I mean, my whole family knew I was being abused, and some of them, my family members would try to stop my mom, especially if they could. My mom was a very strong and powerful woman. She weighed anywhere from between 260 to 300 pounds at any given time. She was 5'10", 5'11". She was very tall, big woman. And my brothers were 6 feet, but, they didn't weigh what she did. And my mom, when she was clobbering you, you definitely didn't stand a chance. And so they would quite often try to come to my aid, but they'd get pushed out, and the door would be locked. They would be shoved out, and they wouldn't be able to get in. So my mom could do what she wanted to do to me without having anybody trying to stop her, right? So this family, they were the first people to actually say, "Oh man, you didn't deserve that." When I wrote this chapter 1, how many fingers am I holding up? This family, after I went to their house, after my mom had beaten me up with a rolling pin and cracked my head and really had beaten me really badly. This is something that I flash back to all the time. I have this flashback on a daily basis. This is something that stays with me. The reason being is it was so violent and it was so vicious that it doesn't ever go away. You know what I mean? But I've learned to deal with it, so I'm cool with it. But the thing is it used to bother me, but now it doesn't bother me so much. But the thing is I remember, it's really hard to describe, being beaten like that. You know what I mean? Unless you've survived something like that, it's hard to understand what it's like to be a child, 13 and a half years old, just sort of thinking, well, this could kill me. And, it's scary. It's a scary place to be. And, when I wrote this chapter, I was glad to be able to do it. And I really wanted to point out that this family had been the only family that had cared enough to actually go down and talk to my mom to tell her that, if they ever saw one more bruise or one more, heard of one more beating, that they would go to the police, right? Now, they wanted to go to the police anyway when I showed up at their home beaten up, but the thing is I talked them out of it, right? I know that they didn't like that. They were very much, law-abiding citizens, right? And so they went down there and said, one more, we will turn you in. We will get her some help. We will intervene. And that was the first time that anybody actually stood up and did that for me. And I wanted that family to be, very much in the forefront of the book. And it was the first time anybody stood up for me. And I realized that I was being abused. See, because before that, it was just my life, And so until these people said, oh, man, that's bad. You shouldn't be treated like that. Your mother has no business treating you like that. No child should be abused, right? They told me this, and I had never realized that before because I just was so used to living this way. So it didn't seem out of place or didn't seem unnormal to me that my mom would bash my head in, right? Because I was just used to it. So it was so interesting to see these people, their concern and care for me. They stayed up all night with me, my friend's mother and my friend, just to make sure I wasn't going into a coma, and I just remember being woken up, and being asked these questions, just to see if I was coherent and was able to talk and think about what the answers would be, whether it was my age or how, my name, what day it was, that kind of thing, right? So it was very, very trippy, and I still remember it all. And that was the thing that really, I was hard to describe the beating, and I didn't want to go too much into detail of the actual beating. I just talked about what had happened. But the voice inside of me during that beating, right, is still with me. And I remember the noises that I was making while she was beating me with that rolling pin. And I remember that my brother actually was home that day, and he was trying to come into the kitchen to help me and to save me. And my mom actually slammed the kitchen door on him and told him to stay out. And so he was not able to help me. So he was there in the home that day, my brother Howard. And when that happened, and that's sad for sure. He left shortly after that, but he left to Canada. He moved to Canada pretty much that same year. But this family, this is where I started to experience love, and I started to experience a real, people that actually cared about me for the first time. They would set a place for me at their table. They invited me into their home to stay with them. When things were tough at home and my mom was having a hard time, all I'd have to do is call them, and they'd say, okay, we'll be over to pick you up. They had moved off the block after a while, and they would come and get me, and I could stay with them, for a week or two at a time, and as long as I needed to, really, just to get out from underneath my mom's the stress and the whole craziness that was going on in our home, right? So I'll never forget this family and what they meant to me. I'm still in contact with the mother. I haven't talked to my friend for a long time, a few years now, but they're still very much in my heart, and they know I'm in their heart, they're in my heart. We will always be like that, and they're really like a very special family to me. And so I had to start at that point. I wanted to sort of let people know, that the abuse to me before had seemed normal, and then when these people, told me that it wasn't right, that's when I started to realize, hey, this isn't right. And I was 13 and a half, right? So that just tells you what abuse does to people, what it does to children. When you grow up like that, you think it's normal. So, throughout the book, I detail a lot of my friends being abused and stuff, and we just thought this was normal. We just thought that this is just the way it was for us, And so, when I saw some of my friends later on in life who had been abused and whatnot, I talked about this on a show not too long ago, I wanted to make a phone call. I wanted to intervene and actually call the police because a friend of mine's sister had been beaten up by her stepfather, and bad, right? And she didn't want me to call the police, and I made the decision not to, and I really have to question that. And then I thought about it. And I thought, I'm so sad to this day that I didn't make the phone call. And what's really because I would hope somebody would have made the phone call for me, right? So I'm trying to look at it the other way from the other's point of view, right? And I should have made the phone call, and I started to look back at it, and think about it, and I thought, it's no wonder I didn't make the phone call. I was so used to being mistreated, so used to dealing with people who had been mistreated their whole lives and living this horrible life, with so many people, that it didn't, it was okay that she said not to worry about phoning the police and not to call it in. I was just like, well, okay, I wanted to. I felt so bad for her, But that's what happens to people who are abused. And that's why a lot of times we see these headlines and whatnot where these people will stand by and watch their children being, tortured and beat. They're so psychologically messed up from the abuse that they're suffering that they cannot make the right decisions, you know what I mean? Which is why, my parents could not make the right decisions, right? They were abused as children as well. They had mental issues, they had emotional problems, psychological problems, anger management problems. I mean, you name it. They were really messed up, you know what I mean? And they created this life for us, you know what I mean? This life of death, a life of hell. And when you grow up like that, that's how they grew up. So then they put that on us, and then of course we were supposed to just deal with it and go along with it, which we had to. And then later in life, you start to realize, hey, this was not at all right. You know what I mean? I see other people living these other lives that are completely different from what I grew up with, and then you start looking at the material that's out there and start talking to people and getting the information and education. You start to realize, whoa, I mean, talk about abuse and talk about psychologically damaging and let alone physically damaging, but mainly psychologically and emotionally damaging. You know what I mean? This is why it's kind of hard for me that my family will not speak up, because they lived in the same home that I did, right? But I think that they can't face it. They're not willing to face it like myself, right? And I have to come to terms with that, and I have to be okay with that. So when I wrote the book, I knew that it could possibly sever the relationship that I have with a couple of my siblings and my dad, right? And I thought, well, they could disown me if they find out about the book, and they could completely want to stop talking to me because of it. And I thought, well, if that's the case, that's the case, because truth is truth, and I cannot not tell the truth just to keep this dysfunctional family around me. If they want to be, to continue to be in my life, they're going to have to be okay with what I'm doing, right? Because I'm not willing to live a lie anymore. I'm not willing to live this thing where, our family had problems, but quote unquote problems, that's all my family will talk about. They'll say, oh, well, we had problems, right? They don't want to talk about the fact that, it was completely horrible. You know what I mean? They don't want to talk about the abuse. They don't want to, they don't want to talk about all that stuff that went on in our home. You know what I mean? Growing up in the home, I didn't detail some of it. It's just too much information. But, it's absolutely crazy what went on there. You know what I mean? My mom, at any given time, if you in the kitchen, she hung out in the kitchen. That was her place. And then, if you went in the kitchen to get a drink of water or something, you just never knew what was going to happen. Plates of food thrown across the room, hot cups of coffee. Get out. You're a slut. You're a whore. And then if you looked the wrong way, you had a wrong look on your face, that's for sure when you know the beating was going to come. She would say, get that look off your face, and that would be it. You'd be in for it. So my family doesn't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about the fact that there was so much abuse. And then of course later on that evening, my mom of course would probably be really depressed and down because she went from being completely psychotic and angry and beating on people to a state of depression, and then she'd be talking about killing herself. I should just kill myself, and of course then you'd have to go feel sorry for her, after she beat the crap out of you, or burned you or did whatever she did, as a child, all of us suffered under her hands, we'd have to go and, oh, Mom, don't kill yourself, we love you, and she would never apologize. She wouldn't say, well, I'm so sorry I did this to you, or, I didn't mean to beat you up, or I didn't mean to hurt you, she would never say that. It would all be, you children are driving me crazy, and I don't know what I'm going to do. My father, she would be talking about my dad. She'd say, my husband is doing this. My husband's doing that. Your dad, right? And going on and on and on about her pain, right? Because she was so depressed. She was manic depressive. She did get diagnosed manic depressive, and back when the CPS or DHS, whichever one got involved, Child Protection Services, diagnosed my dad paranoid schizophrenic borderline, and my mom was diagnosed manic depressive. So, and she was very depressed. Well, I don't blame her. Being married to my dad, that would have been so depressing. He was a very horrible man. So it's no wonder she was depressed, right? So we did feel sorry. We did feel bad for her, and we did try to comfort her and try to help her out. Though she was mistreating us, all of us were good to her. Like my brothers, my older brothers especially, they would try to help her out, and they would be like, Mom, you should leave him. You should leave Dad. You should get out and get your own life. You need to get away from this. Even if you don't take us with you, leave the kids, whatever, but get yourself, a good life, right? Because my brothers really loved my mom, and they were a lot older than myself, so they were older and able to talk to her that way, right? And she would not do it. She wouldn't go, and she would just say, no, I'm just, this is my life. This is all it's ever going to be. She was so down and so completely distressed by this whole life of abuse that she had lived, and then put it on us, right? And so, of course, there was always this very psychological stuff going on, because in the meantime, she was abusive. So one minute she was abusing you, and the next minute you'd have to go and comfort her and try to get her to not think about killing herself, or, this is the way that the family went. And my dad was suicidal as well. So my dad was suicidal after my brother was murdered. He started trying to kill himself by running down the freeway in the middle of the night. So my mom would get my brothers up and say, your father's gone running down the freeway again. And my brothers would have to go out and chase after him and go running down the freeway to get my dad, who was trying to run into oncoming traffic so he could get hit by a car. And so my brothers would have to bring him home and lock him in his room. And, of course, he was hearing demons and all kinds of stuff. And this is the way I grew up. So, I used to sleep with a knife because my dad used to say that he was going to kill the whole family. And he'd be like, well, I'll be doing us all a favor. I'll be doing God a favor if I kill us all, because we're all evil. And I mean, I used to be like, well, it's either me or you, but it's not going to be me. I had a little knife there. Actually, it was a pretty big knife. And I was 8 years old when I started sleeping with that knife, and I thought, well, if my mom finds this knife, I will be beaten for sure. She will beat my butt, I'll be in trouble. But I thought, no, I'm going to keep it there anyway, because I want to be able, it's my only chance to try to save myself from my dad, you know what I mean? And because I seriously thought that he was going to kill us, it wasn't something I didn't just not take lightly. I mean, my dad was very psychotic, and he could have, he tried to drive me and my sister over a cliff one time. And my sister was 5 years older than me, so she went home. She was a lot, more cognitive, and she went home and told my mom, and my mom wouldn't let us drive with him in the car anymore by ourselves, right? We had to go, if we were in the car, she had to be there. So she wouldn't let us go on any more trips with him, even just down the road to the store, right? We were not allowed to go with him anywhere for quite some time alone, because she couldn't trust him, that he wouldn't try to kill us or take off with us. He used to tell me that he wanted to take me to California away from my mom, because my mom was crazy. That's what he would tell me, right? And I was like really young, 5 years old, and I remember I'd be ready to jump out the door, and I'd say, if you don't turn around, if we don't go home, I'm jumping out of the car, because I did not want to go with him. As much as my mom was my abuser and was practically killing me, you know what I mean, breaking my nose and, you know, shoving me into walls and hurting me physically. My dad was crazy. So I was like, no, I just definitely don't want to be raised by him. I'll take my chances with her. And this is the way we grew up, you know, and this is why, you know, a lot of people that knew our family, you know, they've probably read the book, you know, they don't want to look at the truth. They don't want to see what was actually happening there. They don't want to take a look at that nasty truth, you know. And this is sad, right? It's very, very sad. But you know what? You can't make people and force people to come to terms with reality. If they choose to live in some sort of a you know, denial, that's their own choice, right? But you know, it was hard. It was very, very hard growing up like that. I remember feeling very much different and sitting in class. School was always an issue for me. You know, I was not comfortable in elementary school because of the abuse that was going on in the home and towards me. You know, I was bruised quite often, and quite often, you know, I'd tell my mom, I'd be pointing to a bruise on my face, and I'd be like, what am I going to tell the teacher about this? And my mom would be like, tell her I hit you. I don't care. Tell her that I beat you up. Tell her I'm going to do it again, too, if you don't shut your mouth. And, you know, my mom, she just didn't care. And the teachers didn't care. They just let me go right on through. You know, it's very, very sad. And I had so many problems. You know, growing up with my little friend, Arlene Griego, I remember this, she was my best friend. She was killed. I talk about her in the book, and she was my best friend from childhood. I mean, we grew up when we were babies. We started hanging out together pretty much, and she was my angel. You know, she was my protector, and I just loved her. She was 1 year older than me, and she was such a good friend. And when she was killed by a drunk driver, and it was too bad. But I detail quite a bit about that in the book, and she was just such a beautiful person. You know, she used to look out for me in elementary school. She would always come and check on me in my class to see if I was okay, because she knew I'd sit in class and cry all day, right? I was just so emotionally unstable, you know, at the age of 5, 6, 7 years old. I started school when I was, I think I started first grade when I was 5 or 4 or something like that, because I had to go in early because I think social services told my mom to put me in school so I wouldn't be in the home. And so they put me in 1 year early, and also my birth date fell in December, so it was one of those situations, right? So I was quite young and had never been to daycare, and I had been living with this abuse my whole life, only very few short years, but I was not comfortable being in that classroom with all those kids. I didn't know how to relate. The teacher would talk to me, and I'd start crying immediately because she was an authoritarian figure. She was tall, she was big, she was mean, and she was old, and she reminded me of my mom, so I would start crying, and this teacher would, like, call me names and say, oh, you're just a crybaby and all this stuff, and so it would make me cry even more, right? And so I spent like the first, 3 months crying or something like that. It was just absolutely horrible. But my friend would come over and check on me, and Arlene, and she was just like that. And she did that pretty much for the first couple of years that I was in school, first and second grade. Her teacher would let her come across the hall to check on me, which was so cool. And she basically was she was my best friend for, until she was killed. And I remember going to her home, when I was growing up on that street. We grew up on the same street together, and I was she wasn't allowed to play at my house, but I was allowed to play at her house. And her mom, didn't like our family all that much. I don't think she kind of felt sorry for us because we were all so, psychotic. But I think she didn't want her daughters over there at my place, right? Because who knew what was going to be happening at our house? That was the truth, right? But we used to go over there and play and stuff. And one time I remember I had this ceramic fork that her mom had just painted, and she was into making ceramics. And she brought it home, and it was this big orange fork that she was going to put on her kitchen wall. And I remember dropping it, and it busted in a couple of pieces, right? It was pretty damaged, and I freaked out because, see, at home my mom would have beat the shit out of me for that, I completely freaked out. I panicked, and my friend was like, my mom's going to kill you. And oh my God, the thoughts and the fear that came into my mind because of what my mom was doing to me. I thought, oh my God, this woman's going to kill me. And I pictured my mom killing me, so I was freaked out, went running outside, told my sister who was in the front yard, I said, we have to go home right now. And my sister was like, you go home, I'm having fun, because she was playing with the older siblings that were there. We were always at their house, right? And she's like, no, you go. And I was like, oh my God. So the fear and the panic that was driven into me, I will never forget. You know what I mean? And people wouldn't even understand that. They wouldn't even understand what that's like. You know what I mean? To know like that what I thought her mom would do to me would be what my mom would do to me, which was to really hurt me extremely badly, right? that's the abuse I'm talking about. A lot of people think that it was a discipline. Family people that knew my mom was beating me and treating me like that. Family members of my sister, my oldest sister, who had moved out. She knew, but she used to encourage my mom to do that. Because she thought that I was just this bad kid who needed discipline, and she'd be like, "Oh, just smack that brat. You should just teach her a lesson." And she was always trying to get my mom to discipline me, and even though she knew the discipline my mom was dishing out, right? Very sad. And, people, even this neighbor lady that, my friend's mother, Arlene's mother, whose fork I dropped and broke, she knew about the situation at my home. They did nothing to try to stop it, you know what I mean? They knew I was being abused. They knew there was problems, and they knew that I had a lot of emotional problems. I used to have these nervous tics that I, just from growing up in the house, right, with that whole violence. And because my mom, any given day, my mom would be smashing my dad in the head with the lamps, heavy dishes, pots and pans. My dad, on the other hand, would be grabbing her and choking her and slapping her and pushing her down and raping her. And it was just absolutely disgusting and disgraceful. And so my nerves were shot by the time I was probably 2 years old. And so I grew up with these nervous tics, right, whether, I had a lot of these nervous habits that I would do. And I went to it kind of got passed around the neighborhood to my friends and stuff, and to their parents, that I was doing these things, and they would be like, "Oh, show us what you do, show us what you do." And later, at the time, it was very hurtful because I knew why I was doing them. It was completely out of nerves, because I was so freaked out about living in that home, and they would be like, "No, we want to see what you do. It's so funny," and they would laugh at me, and I knew this was all caused because of the abuse that I had suffered, and so it was very hurtful to have them do that. And so I remember, I felt very much sort of, the clown, the one that people laugh at, the one that people make fun of, And even my sister would do that. Like she would hit me or make fun of me or whatever because of these nervous tics, right? She saw what my mom was doing, and she was doing the same thing. My mom was beating on me, so my sister was beating on me. I mean, it's just the way it goes, right? So, this is the thing. It's extremely hard on children, and we, it's hard when you have to grow up like that, and then you have to realize that, you can overcome these things. And for the longest time, I never thought that I would, But this is, these people, I don't know what their problem was, but they're just not thinking. They just weren't thinking clearly, and I remember, the feelings that I had, hanging around with these people, and my best friend, her family and stuff would quite often make fun of me, and so we're not close, and I never, like her family and me and her mom and stuff, her mom's still living and her dad and everything, and I never had any closeness with them because they were quite often making fun of me and not sympathetic to the fact that my mom was completely abusing me and mistreating me, right? But my best friend, she was just awesome, and I just loved her. Now, her parents loved their children very much, and when she got killed, I do talk about that whole situation with, that I had kind of thought that it should have been me to go instead of my friend, because I knew that her family loved her so much. Her family, they were in such pain because she was gone, and they just loved her and they missed her, and I thought nobody would have missed me. I thought that I should have been the one to go. Because my mom did not love me and told me that I was born out of rape and she didn't want me, and she literally, reinforced that when I was an adult, right? So it's not like she just told me when I was a kid. So, you have to face these things. This is very painful, and people that have to deal with this kind of stuff, you sit in a dark place sometimes, you know what I mean, a very, very dark place. And, for years and years, I'd sit in that dark place, and I would spend days, if not weeks, in a depression, in a funk, and just feeling so down. And so I can remember the evil in the home. I could remember the darkness and the evil feelings around, just that were always around our family, right? With the hatred and the despair, the sadness, the sorrow, right? And those are the times when I could really feel it, is when I was feeling really down, and remember back to living in those different homes, and remember what was happening to us and what was happening to me. And 3.5 years ago, when I was sitting on the couch, I was in one of those funks, and just sitting around thinking, how am I ever going to get out of this pain? How am I ever going to be able to love myself and to love this life and to love who I am? You know what I mean? And I'm so glad that I made the decision to stay. And, that's the whole thing. I just hope that people, who are suffering right now with this, and who are survivors of child abuse or domestic violence or any assault or abuse of any kind, that you will not give up ever. My two brothers, they gave up, and it's no wonder. I mean, the abuse that they suffered as children. I remember the beatings. I remember my dad going in the room and kicking and stomping. I remember watching him go into the room with a belt and kicking my brothers and then beating them. And, this is the way they grew up. This is what they learned. This is what they knew. And then my mom, listening to my mom, curse at them and berate them. And, of course, my mom had a belt for them, too, right? We had belts hanging on the kitchen wall. There was a wall in the kitchen. There was a doorway there, and she had these 3 belts there. And it was one for kind of each of us, right? Like each of the ones needed to be belted all the time. And that was one was for me, and one was for my other brother, Howard. And the other one, I don't know who it was for, but I remember the belts in the kitchen, and my mom was quite often beating on my brothers and calling them names and making them, feel so bad, like as if their being born was just such a problem to her, and that's how she treated us, it was just such a problem that we were born and that she had to look after us and she had to be the mother. She just didn't want that, you know what I mean? And so it's quite sad, like I actually called her on it, like, just before I moved up to Canada, because we had a blow up, and I told her off, and she got upset and said she should have just killed herself years ago, and that this life didn't matter to her. And I said, well, something had to have mattered to you. What about your children? Your children love you very much, and your children all loved you very much. And my mom said, you were all just worthless to me. You didn't mean anything to me, just nothing, And I was just sitting there, and I could not believe my ears after all the garbage that they put us through, and finding out that CPS DHS wanted to remove us from the home, and then she went and begged the courts to let us stay, and then continued to abuse and mistreat all of us, and then to have her say that to me was just cut my heart, it was the final stab, that killed me, and this is real, man. This is reality. This is realistic, and this is it. And this is what bothers me, that my own siblings will not, don't have a kind word for me at all. But that's okay, because she was talking about them too, and that's the sad part. They don't even care. But I do, and it hurts when parents and caregivers and stuff tell their children that sort of thing. So be very careful what you tell your children. And for all those who are listening, thank you so much for being here. I just appreciate this so much. And I'm going to continue talking, so anybody who wants to pick up the archive can. I'm going to go through a little bit more here, and if anybody would like to do another show with questions or comments and whatnot, and you really want to ask some questions, please do, and I can always redo, not redo, but just do another show at another time if people are interested in that. But thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate all of your support. This journey has this last hasn't even been a year yet since I started reaching out. All of the people that have been here for me, my friends, I don't know if I'd gotten this far that fast without you all. Your support means everything. And, I come home from work and I don't have any other support. There's no family support, except for my sweetheart, who does support me very much. But he's terminally ill, and there's only so much he can do. He's not well. And so he does the best he can. But he's not a survivor of child abuse and doesn't quite know how to handle the whole thing, and he feels very badly that this happened to me, right? So he almost doesn't know how to deal with it. But all of these people in my life, quite a few of you are sitting in the chat room here tonight, Donna and Dixie Witch. I just thank you, and Women Evolving, and there's another guest in the chat room here. Thank you so much for your support. For being here for me on this journey. And I'm going to continue talking. So like I said, you can pick up the archive if you like and listen to the rest of it. I'll probably go on for another little while. But thanks very much for everything, walking this journey with me every day, and for being here where my family could not be. So I consider you my family, my real family. And I thank you all so much for picking. If you want to pick up a copy of my book, it is triggering, but I detail quite a lot of the abuse, but the proceeds are going to Stop Child Abuse. They're going to Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, And that's the way I wanted it, and I thank them so much for doing that and allowing my voice to be heard. It's just so awesome, and I thank everyone who's been here for me. Have a great night. I'll be back on tomorrow morning again, and you can check my show page and see what shows are coming up. Thank you so much for listening and tuning in to all my shows. I really appreciate it, and I just love you all so much. So make sure you keep reaching out. Don't ever give up. Never, never, ever give up. I don't care what the circumstances are. I don't care how painful it is. Well, I do care how painful it is, but I'm saying I don't care. You can do this. You can do this, and I know it. Because why? Because there's too many people, along with myself, who are walking this journey, and as painful as it is sometimes, there is light at the end of that tunnel, and I want everybody to keep that in mind who's listening to this and knows and is having a hard time or knows someone that's having a hard time. Make sure you reach out to them and let them know that there is light, there is hope, there is truth, and there is goodness. And there's this life is worth living. So make sure you hang in there for it. We'll be talking to y'all real soon, and take good care of yourselves. Good night, everybody. So I don't know how long it'll stream here, but I am going to continue chatting, and I just thank everybody for all their support. There's so many people in the chat room, and I didn't realize that many people would be here. So awesome. Yeah, everybody has been so kind, and this is the thing where my family could not be here for me. So many other people are, and so I consider them my real family. As much as I love my family very much, my sister, my brother, and my dad, they are not on this healing journey with me because they're denying the whole thing, right? Well, they don't deny the whole thing. They're denying the importance of it. They don't think that it takes. They don't think that child abuse is important. They don't think that it's important to not beat a child or verbally abuse a child, curse at a child, and sexually use a child, right? And so it's just, it's so sad, right? My family just doesn't believe these things. My family, a lot of them, one of them actually, two went on to abuse their own children, but not very many people in my family had children. One of my sisters had 2 boys, and one of my brothers had an adopted son. So and my other sister had a daughter. So there's only 3 naturally, like, grandchildren, really, and then 1 adopted. So there's 4 grandchildren from 7 kids, right? And so that's not very much. There's only 2 siblings that actually had children, and then 1 who adopted a child, right? So this is the thing. And 2 out of those 3 siblings went on to abuse their children, my sister and my brother. And my brother might think that he didn't abuse his son, but I heard that he took a hammer to him, and that's abuse. And so if you take a hammer to a child, that's abuse. And my nephew told me that my brother had taken a hammer to him one time at a beating, and that's abuse, and I'm sorry, too bad. So that's the way it goes. I believe in telling the truth, right? So yeah, I wanted to kind of continue on and just keep going here for a while, and anybody who's still listening and wants to hang in and listen to the archive and whatnot, I appreciate that very much. I just there's a few things that I wanted to sort of touch on. There was I can remember, like, for instance, chapter 4, where my mom had beaten me up, and I went to my friends, and her parents had let me stay there for the week, and they had, went down and talked to my mom, and they said, if we see one more bruise or one more beating, we're going to intervene. We're going to call the cops. I remember walking back up to the porch, of our house when I was going home, the day that I actually went home, and I remember the feeling that I had, when I was going up to the door, walking up to our house, looking at that door, just going, oh God, my mom's on the other side of that door. And, just remembering the beating that she had given me, and I thought, man, I'm in for it for sure now. And this is the violence that went on in our home. As soon as I got in the kitchen, she shoved me up against the wall and had her hand on my throat, and she was not choking me very hard or anything like that, but she was just like pushing me up against the wall. And she's like, if you ever, and I mean ever, tell another living soul about what goes on in this household, I will kill you. And I mean, she was serious. You know what I mean? I was just like, whoa, lucky I did not get another beating, because I don't think my head could have taken it, right? I was pretty upset. That was my life. I was 13 and a half years old, already going to be a sophomore in high school, and this is the way my life was, and I remember my mom, people would say, why didn't you run away? You should have run away. I have thought about running away so many times, and I thought, well, where would I go? The park, go sit. There was a big circular cement tube thing, that was in the park that kids could play on, and I thought, well, I could go and stay in that thing overnight, I guess, or I could just go and like find a bush to hide under and stuff, you know what I mean? And I had thought about it, but not. It just didn't. I think the reason why I didn't run away was because I wanted to be part of that family, because my mom was always pushing me away, right? So there's all these psychological issues, right? And I had to do some serious thinking about it, because so many times if children grow up in normal homes, normal families, receiving some love and attention and care, and then the abuse starts later by a step parent or something, I think it's a little bit different. But when you grow up all the time being pushed out, pushed away, told you're not wanted, that you just don't count and you don't matter to your parents, and then to have them want to put you in foster care, because my mom was always tired of my attitude, and my attitude just really was mainly that I didn't. Every time she would go to hit me, I generally would flinch, And because I was flinching and kind of backing away from her, she would get mad and beat me, right? She'd be like, I don't like your attitude, I don't like the look on your face. Because I was flinching and I was afraid of getting beaten by her, then she had a good excuse to beat me, see? So, slap me around, backhand me, throw me up against the wall, that type of thing, right? So that's the whole issue, she didn't even have to have an excuse. All it had to do with, she would just have to say, well, I just don't like the look on your face, right? So that's the sad part, right? It's she used any excuse. It didn't have to have an excuse. But she wanted to put me in foster home. She was in foster care. She was like, I'm so tired of your attitude. And I had asked her if I could go to a football game, really because I needed I think I needed $2 or $5 to go or something. I didn't have any money. And so I just asked her for a couple dollars so I could get a Coke or something. And because I said that, and I said I wanted to go to this football game with my friends, she's like, you're a slut. You're just a whore. You're just going to be out there partying, and you're going to be out there sleeping with guys and all this stuff, right? She's like, you're not going to that football game. I don't care. And then, of course, because I said something, and I was like, why can't I go with my friends, with Arlene and Desiree, right? I just want to go to the football game. I was already in high school. I had already been out partying all night long at various different parties and bikers parties and drinking and doing drugs and smoking dope and getting in trouble, it's like, my God, and here she's telling me I can't go to a football game. So I was like, well, I was pretty pissed off, and so I started to walk out of the room, and she said, I'll put you in foster care. I'm so sick and tired of your attitude, I'll put you in a foster home. And that hurt me so badly, because my brothers who were out getting arrested and doing time in prison for all these things and holding knives to my sister's throats and molesting me, she didn't throw them out of the house. You know what I mean? She never attempted to throw them out of the house. They were perfectly welcome to stay. And because I asked her if I could go to a football game, she thinks she's going to put me in foster care. This is the psychological damage that she would do, right? She, of course, I was like, no, I was determined to stay in that home, because I'm like, you know what? You bore me. You brought me into this world. You're going to have to deal with me. I'm not going anywhere. You're dealing with all these other people in my family who have done these horrible things, and you're not putting them in foster care. You're not making them go away, and you want to push me out. You know what I mean? I was like, no, it doesn't work that way. You're stuck with me. You know what I mean? So that's why I was pushing to stay in the home and not get out. A lot of people ask me the question, like, why didn't you get help? Why didn't you call the police? Why didn't you, reach out and try to get some help? It's a very common question for survivors of child abuse, right? There's so many psychological reasons behind it. I think had I been growing up normally, in a normal home, and then all of a sudden things changed, and then my mom started beating on me with sticks or belts or, her fists or whatever, or my dad, right? Because my dad was usually beating on us with a belt, and sometimes his hands and fists, right? I mean, quite often it would just be a slap or, a choke or throw down to the ground or something. He was quite often pushing me around, pushing me into walls and taking off his belt and beating me with it. So that was mainly the stuff from my dad. My mom, on the other hand, was using heavy objects. She was very much vicious and very much trying to hurt people, right? So she was trying to hurt me. She was definitely going to make sure that the implement that she used was going to cause damage, and it was going to be so solidly hard and painful that I would remember it for the rest of my life, and yes, I did. So, she was completely accurate. But the thing is this is the whole thing. this is absolutely crazy. People would say, well, why didn't you try to get help? Well, if that had started after I had already had a 10 years of normal life and then all of a sudden be being abused, I think you might make a phone call. You'd be like, oh my God, my life is in danger, I got to make the phone call. But when your life is in danger from the time you're born, you grow up like that. You don't think there's anything wrong. It's not that you don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's your life. You just live it. Yeah. So that's the whole thing. It's pretty sad. There's pictures that my sister has. I can remember these specific pictures, right? My sister's got some photo albums with old pictures that I don't have. And she's given me some of the photos to scan and to put onto my Flickr. But some of the photos I just didn't make copies of, so I'm sure that she would give me the copies of the photos if I wanted them. But the thing is, there's a couple of photos that I remember taking when I was young where, the photo I'm in, I'm smiling and stuff, but you can see if you look behind my eyes that I had either just been beaten or been threatened because the fear is there. You know what I mean? I remember a couple of photos that I took that my mom was just prior to the photo threatening to kill me and threatening to beat me up if I didn't straighten up. And of course, then the picture would be snapped and you could see behind my eyes what was going on. A lot of times I think people, if you don't look too closely, they miss things. You know what I mean? And I do have photos up from my youth, and I am smiling, and in quite a few of them. But then towards the end, the pictures from my junior high, it started to wear on me, and I started to not be able to even smile for photos, until I got a little bit older and got some friends, and like some sort of, I don't know. These friends of mine were so awesome, Desiree and Arlene. They were so good, and as much as we were, out, smoking pot and getting in trouble and stuff, doing the normal kind of bad teenager stuff, they were good to me. They did not hurt me. They did not ever attempt to hurt me. They never attempted to just leave me behind at parties and things like that. They would leave me with safe people, but I would wake up in the morning and I had been, I was completely, it's not that I was trying to kill myself or whatever, but I was just using drugs to take away the pain, right? So I would, if I had a bottle of alcohol, I would drink the whole thing. If I had, a whole bunch of pot, I'd smoke the whole thing. You know what I mean? Like I would just be so stoned or so drunk or so tanked, right? I'd just take everything to the extreme, right? And so they just quite often leave me where I was at their friends' homes and stuff, and I'd wake up in the morning with my clothes on thinking, thank God my clothes are still on, because I'd been passed out all night, you know what I mean, and half the next day. But my friends were good friends, and it was just the times, and it was where we grew up. Had we grown up differently and at different times and different ways, that wouldn't have happened. And I know that my friends' parents did not and would not approve of that. So I mean, we'll be honest about this, right? Had my mom found out, she would have killed me for sure. But that's the thing, I was a good kid. Now I think my mom, it wouldn't have mattered what I was doing. She was going to mistreat me no matter what. So whether I was good or bad, it didn't make any difference. I was going to be mistreated. I was going to be abused at home, whether it was physical, psychological, verbal, emotional. It didn't matter, So I started to go the other way, and I started to think, I'll just be bad then, If being good isn't going to help, then I'll just do whatever I can to sort of do the other side, be bad, do drugs and get in trouble and hurt people. You know what I mean? I sort of changed about that time, and you can see my photos on Flickr. I have school photos there, and you can see where my heart started to change. And it was right around the time that I'd hit about 11 years old, 12 years old, that my heart really, when I was 10, I felt like I was dead, and I actually told my mom, I said, why don't you just go ahead and kill me, because I'm dead anyway, because she had beaten me up really badly. It's like she almost broke my nose, and blood was spattered all over the place, and she had slapped me silly, and then came in for round 2 with a belt and beat my legs with it, and I think she might have killed me. I seriously do. Like, had my brother not stopped her, she very well might have continued on and killed me. She was in a rage, and so that was very, very hard on me, you know what I mean? But the thing is where was I going with that? But anyway, that it was hard. She almost broke my nose. That's where I was getting at. She was very, very physically abusive, and that's, when you grow up like that and you spend enough time like that, You spend from year 0 to 12 years old. By the time you're 12, that sort of stuff is going to set in. You know what I mean? And I mean, I still had some childlike qualities when I was little. I had some friends that would come and play, and there was only about 1 or 2 people that were allowed to actually come to my house. It's because my mom was actually babysitting them. There was one girl, Shannon, who I just love dearly. Nowadays, I haven't talked to her for a long time, but she's a good friend of mine from way back, and she was a baby, and I was young, and she was a baby, and she used to be at our house because her mom would let my mom watch after her, which was just because she trusted her daughter with my mom. My mom could be trusted with other children. See, that's the whole issue. My mom was very much a loving person to other people's children. She loved other people's children. She just hated her own children because they were the offspring of from her husband. They were part of her husband, and she hated her husband, and she didn't like what he was doing, and she thought that we all really all we did was cause her a life of misery. See. But then she would get a hold of these other kids and babysit them and treat them quite well and treat them very nice and loving. See, so I used to always be jealous of this. So this little girl, would come over and she'd be over at our house. She was the baby Shannon, and I would push her down, push her away, very jealous because she was getting a lot of attention that I wasn't getting. She was being nurtured where I wasn't, and people, if they just didn't see that. Nobody, it's like their eyes were blinded. It's like they did not want to believe. They thought, oh, look what a good job she does looking after my child. She must be like that with her own children. And they knew better. They could see the bruises on my brother. They knew my brothers were being beaten on and tortured and tormented. And they knew that my mom had belts hanging in the kitchen. They used to come over and they used to see them. So this is where, I have a hard time with this whole thing about everybody being in denial. It's like, okay, deny it all you want, but you know what? I don't care how much you loved my parents. What they did was wrong. That's why, it doesn't matter to me how much I loved my parents. What they did was wrong. I do love my parents very much, and even to this day, I do love my parents. I love my dad. I did not write this story to hurt him, and as a matter of fact, I hope that he doesn't actually ever read it because it would hurt him. I don't want to hurt anybody with this story, and wasn't my intention to hurt my parents, and it was my intention to tell the truth and to be honest about what was going on in our home. It was so dysfunctional. We were so used to it. It was just part of our life, So people say, well, why didn't you call the police? Well, when you're used to growing up like that, and it's your life. You're just dealing with it, and you deal with it the best you can. So that's why the cycle of abuse is allowed to continue on, and that's why we have to stop this with other families. But I'll get into that in another show. This is just mainly about my book, but that's the whole thing. It was incredibly hard, and I was beaten and abused for my behavior. You know what I mean? And my mom was the one who showed me how to behave. So then my mom would be like, "Well, do as I say, but not as I do." So in other words, she would beat on me for no reason at all, and then if I lashed out at one of my friends or because I didn't like what they were doing to me, or stood up for myself against my nephews who were quite often picking on me, then I would be smacked around or beaten or given the belt or whatever, and told off because of my behavior. You're just a bad kid, it'd be beaten into me that I was just this bad kid, and that's so hard on people. That's not discipline, that's abuse. I hope everybody knows the difference between that. It's so sad to see what people do to their kids, absolutely horrible, horrifying. My nephews, I don't talk a whole lot about them, and I didn't mention too much about them in the book, just little bits here and there about my sister and her behavior towards them, and because I wanted people to know that she didn't raise them very loving, and she did the best she could. I know that. She was not a loving person, period. As much as she did love people, she could not show it. She grew up with my mom, right? So, can't blame her, right? But the thing is my nephews like to one of my nephews, the other one was killed by a drunk driver, right? But one of my nephews is living today. He probably has a hard time with my story. I don't think he probably likes the fact that I've written it because these are his grandparents that I'm talking about, and he loved his grandparents very much, and my mom would always stick up for my nephews, because my sister was always, whenever my nephews were at the house, my sister would and her husband would come and pick them up. Like my mom would be watching my nephews, right? And they would be, of course, acting like two normal boys would act, 7, 8 years old, getting into a little bit of trouble, having fun, and sometimes fighting, because they were two boys very close in age, and they were always kind of fighting and battling it out, right, involving me in the middle of it. And we loved each other very much. Me and my nephews, we grew up more like brothers and sisters, right? And then my sister would come to pick them up and her husband, and my mom would be like, "Oh, they were good. They were good boys." And then because she knew that my sister and her husband would beat on them if they found out that they weren't. And my nephews would always tell on each other, which was the stupidest thing to do, especially in that situation. My nephews would be like, "Well, he did this to me," and then my other nephew would be like, "Well, he did this to me." And so then my sister would be like, "Leo, you have to straighten up those boys." So off would come the belt, and they'd be beaten on or pushed up against the wall, slapped around. And of course, my mom would be trying to stick up for them, right? "Oh, don't do that. They're just boys. They're just having fun." See, she could do that for other people's children, but she could not do that for her own. And so, of course, that was very hurtful to me to see this because growing up, watching her protect my nephews and not do anything to stop the abuse she was putting towards me is very psychologically damaging. You know what I mean? And then to have my nephews, my nephews, well, my one nephew, not the other one, but my one nephew today, who won't acknowledge that what went on in our home was incredibly bad, and that his uncles, my brothers, are all dead, and that they were all drug users, and most of the family just likes to look at this whole thing as if it was nobody's fault and our parents were just perfect, and everything was just great. And it's like, it was absolutely horrifying the way we grew up, absolutely horrifying, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody. That's why we have to stop child abuse, right? But the whole thing is, one time, I just want to mention this briefly because I didn't put this in the book, but I went to spend the night at my sister's house. I didn't like being around my sister because she was 18 years older than me, so when my nephews were, 5 or 6, she was 23, 24 years old, and I was, of course, 6 years old, see, so... so that's just the whole issue. She was mean, I didn't like her, and I didn't like going to her house. She was she was a hateful person, a hateful mother. She would make us all stay outside, me and my nephews, and we weren't allowed to go in to get a drink of water, and we had to drink out of a hose outside, and the hose, of course, had been sitting in the sun in the heat of the desert, and the water was hot, and it tasted like garbage coming out of there. And one time I needed the bathroom, and she was like, "Well, then you have to just use it in the yard, or you have to go down to the gas station because you're not coming inside." So this is the way she was. She was just a horrible mother, and I don't know how my nephews actually survived living under her. I don't think I would have made it. My mom actually had more empathy than my sister did. I mean, even though my sister physically and violently beat on her children as well, but they don't want to. My one nephew wouldn't admit it now. My other nephew might, but I mean, I witnessed a lot of it myself. But I was spending the night over there one night, and we were staying up. My nephew kept turning on the light, and we're all sleeping on bunk beds and whatnot. And my one nephew turned on the light because we wanted to play. We didn't really want to go to bed, right? Because we were about 7, 8 years old, and my brother-in-law kept saying, "Well, you have to," their father, he kept saying, "You kids have to go to bed, lights out," right? So he was starting to get mad, right? My nephew kept turning on the light, even though he had already told us not to. So he says, "That's it." So he came in with the belt, right? I took his belt off, and of course I'm freaking out because to me the belt is something that is very, very serious. It's not going to be a light, couple of smacks on the rear. The belt to me was a serious beating, right? So I started freaking out, of course, and screaming and crying and stuff like that because I'm thinking, oh my God, he's going to beat the shit out of me, and because that's what my mom was doing, right? And my dad. So then, of course, he got mad because he's thinking, what are you... I'm not even hurting you because, you know what I mean? He's just hitting me quite lightly with this belt, right? And his sons, right? And he wasn't really coming in there with the belt to do any damage. He was just coming in there to get us all to straighten up, right? And so I freaked out. And see, they should have clued into that. They should have clued into the fact that I had way overreacted to that belt. And they should have either said, "What's going on at home? Are your parents hitting you with one of these? Or is it just that you've never seen one of these?" See, they knew. They just didn't want to admit it. Even my brother-in-law today likes to minimize the whole thing, right? He likes to minimize it, but that's because he didn't see that bloody nose after my mom practically broke my nose, and she could have broke my neck. You know what I mean? This is the whole thing, the physical abuse that I endured. No child should have to go through that. No child should have to live this life. With these memories and images in their head, body memories and pain in their body, right, from abuse, right. Whether it's physical, sexual, and then psychological and emotional abuse can cause a lot of physical effects too, a lot of physical problems. I didn't talk a whole lot about that in my book, but I remember when I went into my dad in the chapter, that I talked about that my mom had surgery. And my dad was in her room bothering her, right? And I'm just trying to find that chapter here. She had major surgery, and she was so sick, and the doctors actually sent her home. And they said, you have to be very, very still. We want you in bed. We don't want anybody bothering you. And, you're going to have just to get rest and take it easy, or you could die, right? Because her stitches, like, she had major problems with her, with her. She had hernias and all kinds of. She had 7 kids, but she actually had 10 kids, but 3 of them were born stillborn. So 7 of us made it, but 3 were born stillborn. So that's the thing. Chapter 6, Led Zeppelin, Locker Room, 360s in the Camaro. I talked about that. That I thought my dad was attacking my mom because she was saying, "No, get out of here, Warden, just leave me alone." And she was crying, and she was so sick, And so I got really pissed off because I had my pink plastic bat sitting there, and because I knew he was going to be in her room. I knew it. As soon as it would get dark and it would get quiet and the house would get quiet, I knew he'd be in there. And so I was waiting for it, really. I was awake and everything, and I heard my mom calling out and crying out, and I was like, oh my God, he's in there, he's attacking her, or he's doing something to her. He's going to try to rape her, which I had seen and witnessed myself, firsthand. And so here she was, sick and everything, and I thought, that bastard better not rape her, I was about, I was pretty young, I wasn't even hardly 9 years old. And I took my plastic bat in the room, snuck up behind him very quietly, raised it up in the air, and smashed him in the head with it as hard as I could. And, it knocked his glasses off, and he was pretty pissed off. And he grabbed me and shook me and was, yelling at me and stuff, and he telling me, how dare you, and he threw me across the room, like he literally shoved me as hard as he could into a wall across the room, and I sort of just slid down the wall. I remember that my back hit first because my head was going forward because of the force from being thrown like that, and then my head hit next, and then I slid down, and I just laid there because I was seeing stars, actually. I was dazed and confused, right? And I could see these little stars. I was out of it, man. And he came over and was kicking me, right? And my brothers actually came in to save me because my mom started screaming to my brothers, get her out of here, right? So my brothers actually woke up and came and got me out of there. And one of my brothers actually was my brother Rob was sitting with me and holding me and trying to caress me and trying to console me because I was pretty upset. And I was in a lot of pain, right? So I have a lot of damage to my back because of that, my upper back, right by my neck. And people don't care in my family, they don't care. It bothers me that my sister doesn't care and that my brother doesn't care, what my mom did to me. It does bother me that they don't care. And my mom, I don't talk a lot about the fact that my mom burnt me. I did put it in the book, and the reason being is that it happened. It was the truth. And it happened so fast. Like, she didn't hold me there for 10 hours. I mean, we're talking, it was very brief and it was very quick. When she grabbed, I was walking by and I had a halter top on, and she turned with a pan of cookies, and of course I wasn't paying attention. She burnt my side, right? And I yelled out, and I was like, ouch, I probably said something like, oh, you burned me or something, who knows what I said, right? Exactly, to cause her to be mad at me, but she was mad. Instead of setting the cookie pan down and saying, oh my God, come here, let me check it out, let me get you some burn ointment. That's what most normal parents would do, right? My mom grabbed me by the arms and started shoving me into the oven. She was like, look what you made me do. And then she says, you are doing this to yourself. That's how sick she was. I mean, we're talking, this was within, it happened so fast, probably, I wouldn't even say 10 seconds. She grabbed me and tried to shove me in the oven. She put she was forcing me into the oven, so my knee actually came in contact with the oven door that was down, and my hands, she had both my hands, and she was sticking them onto the oven racks, right? And it was just a brief second, so there was no, major burns or anything like that. The burn to my side was worse than the burns to my hands and my knee. My knee was burnt, but not badly. It was just so fast, right? But then she took me into the living room and slapped me around, beat me up, right? And was calling me names and all this, right? And here I was thinking it's her fault because, she should have been looking for where I was, and I'm thinking, it doesn't matter whether I walked into the pan or not. She still shouldn't have beat me up. But this is how it was in my house, right? And so, this kind of stuff, it just makes me mad that my family does not they're not there for me, and they weren't at the time. The time that I will talk a little bit about this because my sister actually recently said that she said, "Oh, remember when Howard had left that pencil underneath the bed?" She actually thinks it's my brother. She thinks it's my brother that got beaten up because the pencil was underneath the bed, and she put her toe under the bed, and the pencil lead broke off in her toe. And then she went and told my mom because she was like, she's like, Lori left a pencil under the bed, and look what happened. So she showed my mom the lead that was in her toe, and so my mom started chasing me with a belt, and I started running out the front door because I knew she was coming after me. I was like, oh shit, So I started taking off, and my mom actually caught me and sort of knocked me to the ground, and then beat me with this belt out in the front yard, right in the middle of a cactus patch, right. So here I'm trying to there's no way I can protect myself. My knees and stuff are full of cactus. My arms and hands were full of cactus, and goat's heads and whatnot. Those little tiny little prickly cactuses and stuff like that. And in the meantime, she's beating the crap out of me with this belt, and out in the middle of the front yard in the middle of the day with all these neighbors standing around watching. Right, cars were driving by, people were looking, and I'm sitting there just in a pile of humiliation, because it was so embarrassing. People were pointing but nobody stopped her. Nobody stopped her, including my sister, who was right behind her and could have and should have said something. So my sister, never did anything to try to protect me. And do I hate her for it? No. I have to just chalk it up to the fact that she grew up in the same home that I did, and she was, she was probably dealing the best that she could. She was probably dealing with the whole thing the best that she could. We talk about some of this stuff, But it's just that her memories, she doesn't quite have it right. You know what I mean? She wasn't paying attention. She's not willing to take a look at this for the truth. You know what I mean? She doesn't remember the fact that she was sitting in the bedroom when my mom actually practically broke my nose because she slapped me around. I like to call it bitch slapped because that's exactly what it was. She bitch slapped me until my nose bled, right? And she split my lip and really could have broke my neck actually from being hit that hard, right? But the thing is my sister was sitting on the bed doing her homework. I remember this clearly because my sister was a goody-goody, and she was doing her homework, and she was a goody-goody. She was trying to stay out from under the abuse, I'm sure of it. She was trying to do everything right so that she would not be abused because my mom didn't mind slapping her around too, right? So my sister was in the room, and she said, you better stop that, knowing that my mom was going to come in there and kick my ass, right? So she witnessed the whole thing. She sat on the bed while my mom was beating me up. You know what I mean? But she does not remember it, and she doesn't have any clear cognitive memories of going in the bathroom to help me because my nose was bleeding so badly. Right, it was just coming down. It was pouring out actually everywhere. My lip was busted. I was bruised and beaten quite severely. Right, and then plus my mom had come in there. After that with a belt, right? So my nose was still bleeding after this whole beating, and my mom had beat me with this belt, and for quite a while. Like, we're not talking a couple of hits. I mean, we're talking, she stood there and whipped my ass, you know what I mean? Well, my legs, really. And I just sat there in a bit of a daze, because I was just like, I'm dead. She's killed me. I felt like I was physically dead, spiritually dead. My whole inner self really felt dead that night. It felt like she killed me, right? And my sister doesn't remember that. She doesn't remember any of that stuff. So it's hard when you don't have anybody that will actually, who saw it or who was there, who will actually, witness it and say, you know what, I was there and I'm so sorry. Instead of that, what would really mean something to me is if my family members, the rest of them, my brother and my sister would come over, sit down and give me a hug and tell me, look, we're so sorry that Mom did what she did to you, and we're so sorry that we know it wasn't your fault, and you didn't have anything to do with it. It wasn't because you were a bad kid. It wasn't because you were stupid. It wasn't because you deserved it. It wasn't your fault, and it would be so nice to have them come and actually be part of my life and part of my healing journey and validate the abuse, but they won't. They're going to continue to live their life of denial and want to pretend it's all good so they don't have to face their own abuse, right, that they suffered. And, that's the way it goes, right? I can't force them to heal. I can't force them to go on this healing journey with me. And I can't expect them to be there for me, because they're not. They're not at all agreeing with anything that I'm saying. They're just like, we don't like what you're doing, whatever. Too bad. Truth is truth, It's like that rolling pin. My sister keeps the rolling pin. I talked about that on a couple of shows not too long ago because it bothers me, the fact that she keeps this rolling pin that my mom bashed my head in with and could have killed me with. My mom, one more blow really could have done it, right? I mean, how many more blows could my head take? And after my mom cracked my head open, and one more blow, I was, I'd like to think, sadly could have done it. I could have been killed by her, and my sister cherishes this wooden rolling pin because my grandfather made it for my mom. It was a homemade rolling pin, heavy duty, hardwood, hard sucker, not the cheapy ones that you see in the stores nowadays. And it wasn't made out of marble; it was wood. Marble would have killed me for sure. This is a wooden rolling pin, but it was heavy duty, made from serious heavy wood, and not those lightweight, crappy things that we have. This thing was a deadly weapon, you know what I mean? So my sister cherishes it because it belonged to my mother, so she keeps it. She's like, look at Mom's rolling pin, and every time I see that thing, I get so pissed off. And I'm just like, how dare you keep that thing? You know what I mean? How dare you keep something like that, knowing that Mom bashed me with it and beat me with it, you know what I mean? And hurt me with it. When I'm talking about beating, I'm talking about hurting in every way, you know what I mean? It's so hard, and that's why I wanted to sort of do this show. There's a lot of this stuff that, that I just couldn't get into the details into the book. It would have just gone on and on and on. And as it was, I wasn't sure if I wanted to try to make the book a little bit bigger or longer, more inclusive, and the people that were looking at it, and Donna and Sandra said, no, it's fine like it is. It's abuse is hard to look at. It's hard to read, and so you're doing a good thing, telling it like it is, and getting the necessary details in there for people to see what happened to you. You know what I mean? And also to see what's happening to you now, which is just awesome, right? So this is the thing. The book could have been a million pages long, with the details and whatnot. And I'm glad that I listened to them because I think it's detailed enough. But I just wanted to do a show and talk about some of this stuff so people could see where my heart is. This book, because it's written, just doesn't close the chapter for me. I have a lot of flashbacks. I have a lot of things that will trigger me, to when I'm thinking about abuse, and especially because what I do, fighting to stop child abuse, standing up, against abuse, standing up for children, for child rights, and this can trigger survivors, right? That's why a lot of people who have survived child abuse just cannot get involved. It's too painful, because they're dealing with their own pain as well. But for me, it's really the only way that I can do it, is to be as honest as possible and to look at it, to face it, you know what I mean, and to say, okay, so my mom abused me, and I think what's really funny is I talk about it in the book where Cecil and I, my sweetheart that I'm with today, he's my sweetheart in 15 years, well, it's 14 years we've been together, and he's a good man, and we had our problems at the first year that we were together. We both needed to learn how to work together as partners and as a team. We were having a hard time doing that, and I was very stressed out, was pregnant, wasn't sure about having a baby, wasn't sure I could be a good mother, had a lot of problems with my anger, and was taking a lot of my stuff out on him. And he was pushing back, kind of saying, can't treat me like that. And of course, he was in my face, so I was taking it as abuse, and it was horrible, so we weren't getting along at all. But just before we had just when we got together there, before I found out I was pregnant, I woke up from a nightmare that I was having, and it was a dream. I actually don't detail the dream that I was having, but I was having a nightmare, and it was a nightmare where my mom was, we knew this girl way back, a long time ago. She was abused by a Native American tribal clan, that she lived with in New Mexico there, and she was abused terribly. I mean, they hung her upside down and beat on her, burned her. I think there was sexual abuse there, and she was younger than me. She was quite a bit younger than me when I met her. I think I was 12, 13 when I met her, and I think she was maybe about 7 or 8 years old or something, maybe 8. She was young, and she was kind of mentally disabled, and she couldn't hardly see. She was practically, she was so mistreated and so abused, right? This friend of ours, on the street, on the block that I lived on, it was her friend's adopted daughter. Well, my mom used to talk about this girl, and I met her a few times. This girl, I don't remember her name, but she was a real sweetie, and I felt so bad for her because I knew what she had suffered. I was abused as a child. I knew what she had been through, but I didn't know some of it. But obviously being hung upside down and beaten on and burned, and I mean that's just sick. But the thing is these people were sick. But anyway, this poor girl. Who knows if she's alive today? I have no idea. But anyway, my mom had so much compassion for her. I remember my mom used to talk about her and say, that poor girl was abused, and because my mom was abused as a child, see. So my mom could see that other children were abused, but she would not admit that her own behavior was abusive, right? And when she was called on it, she'd just beat you even more. Like if I spoke out about the fact that I didn't like her beating on me, or like saying, "Why are you hitting me? Why are you hurting me?" And she'd be like, "If you don't shut your mouth, I'm going to beat you up. I'll beat you. I'll give you something to talk. I'll give you something to cry about, or I'll beat you up again." Right? We weren't allowed to say anything about it, right? So her behavior had to be, not questioned. But then again, she would question other people's behavior. She'd be like, "How could anybody do that to a child?" Right? This is where my mom was so psychologically screwed up, you know what I mean, to be able to be two different people like that. She must have been DID or something, I don't know, but she was abused as a child, and she was screwed up, that's for sure. But anyway, I had this dream that night with Cecil and I. We had gone to bed, and I woke up in the middle of the night crying and crying and crying and crying because my mom was saying, "Look how they abused that girl." And I said, "Look how they abused me." And I was crying so bad because I was remembering that my mom had so much compassion for that little girl and did not care what she was doing to me, And it hurt, It really hurt to face that. And I was 30 years old, and just not even 31 yet when that happened. And he held me and he was just rocking me. I said, "My mom abused me," and I was just crying and crying and crying. And he was like, "What?" Because he didn't know before that that I had been abused. See, so this was the first time that he had heard anything about that. So it was scary for him. And I told him, I said, "My mom said she would haunt me till the day I died, and she is. She haunts me in my dreams, and she haunts me in my life. And this was before. Now she doesn't. But I don't have those dreams anymore, thank God. But I used to. I used to dream a lot about the abuse that I suffered, and it was pretty hard, pretty sad, And where do you, that we have to make peace with ourselves. We have to make peace at some point with our life, But to just detail some of this, I didn't put into the book the fact that when I had been sick that one time that my mom had made me sleep in my own throw up. My mom, this is how she was. She was just so not a good mother. Like I had eaten too much food at my friend's house. Then I came home and had dinner. And it's because it was a holiday. It was St. Patrick's Day, and I'd eaten too much corned beef at my friend's house. And then I went home and had corned beef dinner too. It was way too rich and way too much meat, probably, right? So I woke up in the middle of the night coughing, and I thought that I was just coughing, right? But I was actually throwing up, and I had thrown up all over my bed. And this is just disgusting, and I know I'm sorry, but it has to be talked about because the whole issue is that I was so sick and so out of it. You know what I mean? Because I was not well, and my mom came in the room because my sister had gone and got her up, and she said, "How dare you wake me up?" So she didn't beat on me or anything like that, but what she did was she just threw the sheets on my bed and left me. But I couldn't make my bed because I was sick. I was so sick I couldn't even sit up. So I just laid there and slept all night in my own throw up. Now this is not, what kind of a mother would do that? What kind of a mother would just get mad at their child for something like that and throw the sheets on the bed and just leave them there to sleep overnight in their own throw up? This is the kind of stuff that makes me angry, and what kind of a mother would know that her son is molesting their youngest baby daughter and not put a stop to it? I don't talk a whole lot about the molestation from my brother, but I'm sure it was him. I thought it was my dad for so many years, and then I thought, no, it had to be my brother because he was always, when he tried to commit suicide that one time, he had slit his veins and he was literally bleeding to death, and he was talking to us on the phone while he was losing all this blood, and he was sort of out of it, and he was talking away, and he knew who he was talking to. He was talking to me, so he said, "Oh, I remember you when you were a baby. Your skin was so soft and so smooth, but not in a baby way, in a sexual way." And I was just like, "Oh, you son of a bitch," you know what I mean? I knew it right there. I knew it in my heart. I said, "That's the one who abused me, who sexually abused me when I was 8 years old." I had blocked it out for so long. And I bit him on his ear or his nose. I can't remember which one, but I bit really hard, and I got punched in the face for it. And, told that he would kill me if I ever told anybody and that sort of thing, right? But the thing is, I told my mom because I was in pain from the abuse, right, from the sexual abuse, and I told my mom that I was hurting, and I told her where, and she said, and I told her that somebody was doing something to me, right? And she said, that's your problem, not mine. You deal with it. Wrap yourself up in a blanket. That's what she told me. She says, wrap yourself up tighter in a blanket. I'm like, to this day, I mean, I can laugh about it now because it's over. But the thing is years ago I would not have been able to laugh about it. But the thing is, as a child I wasn't laughing about it, I tell you that. And that bothered me for the rest of my life, my own sexuality, my own, this whole idea of being a woman, watching my dad rape my mom and then seeing what my brother did to me, and, just watching this horror, this horror of a life, play out before me. I hated my body and I hated who I was as a woman, and I wanted so badly to be a woman and to be able to love myself and love my body and have a relationship with a man, but I just couldn't even tolerate anybody touching my body. The damage was done. It was very, very damaging, and that's the whole thing, right? It's so sad when people have suffered this kind of stuff, and that's why it's so important that we, if you've been through this kind of thing, and which I know so many people who have, I know personally so many people who have, won't name names, but my heart is with them, because I know where they've been, I know where they're going, I know where they're at, and it's so incredibly hard, because people say, well, how come you're doing so good, how come you're able to cope? Well, there was years where I couldn't cope, until I was 21, I was a heavy drug user. I was so high that most of the time I was avoiding the whole thing. I was just always avoiding the whole thing because I couldn't cope. So I was doing a lot of drugs from the time I was 12 until I was 21, and that was not coping. I wasn't coping. Period. I was just doing drugs and getting high and not facing it and letting the anger and stuff just boil and boil within me, and the hatred and the self-loathing. Right. So then when I stopped doing the drugs, I had a lot of work to do because I needed to be able to face this life, and then I started thinking I should kill myself. And I thought, no, my brother killed himself. I don't want to do that. So something just kept me holding on, and for whatever it is, I don't know what it is inside of us that makes us want to survive. I think that that's the whole issue, You have to find what it is inside of you that wants to fight, and give it some room. If you're a survivor out there, let yourself heal. Let yourself move forward. Let yourself have a good life. We have to do this for ourselves. This is it's up to us. We have to be responsible for this. We can't. No one's going to be able to really do that for us. As much as I had good people in my life since I left my abusive parents and got out on my own and met some wonderful people and stuff, they couldn't take away the pain. They couldn't help me. But I think reaching out is the biggest thing that you can do. These people were not qualified counselors. They were not qualified therapists. You know what I mean? They didn't know how to help me, right? And so I did a lot of self-help, and I think that's what got me where I am today, is actually doing a lot of self-help and getting involved and actually starting to sort of, I'm telling you, I spent years looking at this, you know what I mean? So it's not like it's recent. I've spent years and years looking at this. And so over the years, especially the last 3 years, have developed a lot of good coping skills. I quite often think about going to get a bottle, just about every day I think about going to get a bottle. I was never an alcoholic. But the thing is I was a drug user, and because I don't want to use drugs and I want to stay on the right side of the law, I'm thinking, hey, I'll go get a bottle because I know that'll wipe away the tears. That'll drown it all. I used to drink pretty heavy when I was young. I was not an alkie, but I used to drink whole bottles and just get completely obliterated. And this is the thing. I know what that will do for me, and I know that it won't help. It won't help at all. So every day I say I'm going to go get a bottle, and then every day I don't. I just sit home and I just deal with this stuff because it has to be dealt with. And I'm strong enough to do it on my own, but not everybody is. So, you have to reach out and reach out to somebody. If you need somebody to help you, then you need to call someone, whether it's a counselor, therapist, a good friend, call a group support, get involved in a group support. That's what I did, and I found that very helpful because when I first started on this healing journey, especially this last year, I joined a couple of these groups, support groups, child abuse support groups for adult survivors, and it really made a huge difference because these people validated what I went through. They were like, we know what you've been through. This is horrible. You should have never had to go through that. And then, of course, I'm saying right back to them the same thing. You didn't deserve that, and no one does. And my God, we certainly didn't deserve that. And we have to be able to move forward and heal. And we just wished everybody the best. And it was just awesome. And I would hope that people will reach out and get some help and not suffer in silence. The shame doesn't belong to us. And next week on my shows, One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, I'm going to cover shame, the whole issue with shame and whatnot, and probably do a whole lot of talking about my past and what causes children to feel this kind of shame. And I thought that this show would be like a good precursor for it. And I just wanted to talk about my book a little bit. It's just amazing. I just owe really all of it, my whole existence, to God, obviously the Father Creator. But the whole healing and the whole wholeness. I know where that comes from because I believe that God is good. God is mercy, love, compassion, light, truth, and goodness. And for me, that means everything because that's what my heart is craving and wanting so bad is goodness and mercy and truth, compassion and light, which is what I did not have as a child. So that's why I like the title, A Life of Death Through Redemption, and that's why we chose it because it was a life of death, it was a life of hell, it was a life of darkness, it was a life of evil. Right, pure evil. And I didn't get to go in tonight to talk about that stuff, but if anybody would like to talk to me or want to do another show and discuss some more of the stuff that went on in the home, I'd be more than willing to do it. It just can't be done in one show. It just can't be done in it's a whole lifetime of stuff, right? So it takes a lot of time to go through that stuff. But the evil that went on in that home, and the evil and darkness and weird stuff that would happen. Like this one lady, these people moved into our home that we used to live in on Indian School. I call it the house from hell because that's where most of the abuse took place, actually a lot of it, and it was very evil. These people, after we moved out of there, I actually met the people that moved in after we moved out, and they said, man, that was a weird house. Talk about a lot of weird stuff, in the walls. You could feel the hatred, you could feel the anger, and I said, that was us. We left that behind. And I was a few years older then, and she was this woman and her son and their daughter lived there, and I was friends with their daughter and her son, and they said, yeah, and there was blood on the carpet, and there was blood all over the carpet underneath the padding, and I was like, well, that's mine. Just crazy stuff. And she was like, oh my God, she says, I can't believe that. She said, that is horrible. And I said, yeah, no, I know. It was very, very bad. And she could feel the abuse in that home. She could feel it, like before she even knew it was me that our family lived in there. This woman was telling me about this, and I knew them for years and years. She was a good friend of mine, and her son and her daughter were very good friends of mine. And she painted me a picture that I still have today that I keep on my wall here. And she's an artist, and she was a beautiful lady. And her son was just awesome. And she divorced her husband because he stabbed her son with a knife when he was 8 years old, and he was abusing the kids, and it was just horrible. So she got out of that marriage, got her kids to safety. She knew all about abuse, and she would talk to me and stuff. It was really, really awesome to have somebody talk to me about that stuff. I was a few years older. I was probably, at the time, 16, 17 years old at that time. So it was interesting to talk to her because they would talk about that house and the feelings that they would get in there. And she didn't even know until I told her that it was us living in the home, and it was a horrible, horrible place to live. It was hell, and we put the hell there. My family, wherever we went, the hell would follow us. And there's been some strange stuff. Like my sister has the same dream that I do about this house that we go to, and this house has a red room and all these walls with this red kind of wallpaper on it. There's wooden furniture, and it looks very kind of stately. And the two of us know it's very evil. And I talked to my sister. I said, I keep having this dream, and I told her what it was about. She said, oh my God, I keep having that same dream. My dad was attacked by. He was very psychologically disturbed, and he used to see demons, and he had a lot of problems with demons, and he would think the demons were trying to get him, and the devil was always out after him, and that's why he was always thinking he should kill us, because we were evil and he should kill us. And the psychological damage and stuff that went on in that home, it's no wonder my brothers are dead, committed suicide. I mean, it was pretty hard for them to grow up to deal with that. My dad calling them the devil and beating on them and hurting them, hating them, it's no wonder that they're dead, but that's why I choose to fight to live, because the whole issue is that, my brothers are gone. They will never get the opportunity to experience love and life and truth and goodness and mercy and have fun with their friends and make a good life for themselves because they gave up. And that's what I'm here to tell you tonight, is that if you're a survivor and you're having a hard time, never, ever, ever give up. Just never do. Don't allow yourself to let your abusers win. Don't allow yourself to let evil win. Because you know why? We can win this fight by staying alive and working our way to that light, walking our way to that hope, to that light, and to that truth, right? Because it's out there, and I know this. A lot of people tell me I'm full of crap, but you know what? I'm not. And I am telling you from the bottom of my heart, this is real stuff, because I've been there, and I know so many people who have been there. And it is hard. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it's not. That's why I'm doing the show tonight, because I was in a sort of a painful place in my life today, sitting around thinking about a lot of this stuff, having some flashbacks, and I thought, what better night to do it? I have to be in a certain frame of mind to be able to recall those types of feelings and those memories, right? Very, very, very painful. So, I know and I understand the pain. But you know what, though? It's worth it. It's worth hanging around for, because, 3.5 years ago, if I would have given up, I would not be sitting here today being able to say it's worth it. Life is worth hanging on to and fighting for. Your life is worth fighting for. And if nobody's going to fight for you, then you have to fight for yourself. And that's where I'm at. Nobody was fighting for me to stay alive, and nobody would even cared if I had killed myself. They would have cried a little bit, and then that'd be it. They'd have been like, "Oh, what an idiot, she killed herself." But they wouldn't have cared about what my mom did to me. They wouldn't have cared about what my dad did to me or my brother. They wouldn't have cared what happened to me. They wouldn't have cared about what I did to myself because of the abuse. Right? They wouldn't have cared. It would have just been all my fault, and then they would have just gone on and had more cake and ice cream, or whatever they're doing. So that's the whole issue, right? It's so important that we do not allow our abusers to win. We need to win this fight, and I wish my brothers were here today, because I'd love to tell them, the same thing. Hang in there, bros, because I used to tell them. I used to talk to them all the time, and they were always down, just very down and depressed and bummed out. When growing up in the same home, right? I knew why. And I'd be in the backyard talking to them, and they'd be like, this life is just shit. It's just garbage. And I'd be like, no, it's not. We have to fight to live. We have to keep going. See, as a child, I knew this. And that's why I guess there's something inside of me that God has given me, some sort of a fight, He's put something in me that makes me want to stay here and to heal and to do this, you know what I mean? And I know it's from God, right? I know that's from God, because God is good, and everything that He does is good. So that's why I know that's goodness, right? So, I wish my brothers were here today. I really do. And sadly enough, they're not. They took their own lives. And so that's why I made a deal 3.5 years ago with God. And I said, I will no longer, ever fight to kill myself, to end this life, working so hard to end it. I will work really hard to stay here and to heal and to have a good life and to learn how to love myself and to learn how to love this life and the people in it, And it's not an easy road, and nothing that is ever good or worth it is easy. That's for sure. So it's a hard fight, but you know what? We can do it, and it's so worth it. It is so worth it. So get a hold of me if you need something. I'm going to end the show now. It's been 2 hours. And I thank everybody for listening and for tuning in and for being here tonight. I had quite a few people in the chat room, and I thank you all so much for being here. You're all my lovely friends, and I just love you so much. And thanks for everybody who's tuning in, listening to all my shows. I have 9,300 shows listened to or something. It's just amazing. And I never thought that many shows would be listened to, and I thank you all very much for doing that. I've done about 340 shows or something, and I can't believe that many shows have been listened to. So thank you so much for tuning in and listening to me day after day after day. I just wish you all the best. And if I can do something for you, if I can find any resources or information for you, let me know. I'm a Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and it's a volunteer position that I love dearly. I hope to be able to go out and do some public speaking and public advocacy work to promote education and awareness and prevention of child abuse, Canada-wide, United States as well, and then eventually, hopefully, the world. I speak Spanish, and I'm trying to learn Persian. I speak some German. I could learn French probably quite easily. So I hope to be able to go out and internationally get involved. I also want to learn sign language for the deaf. There's so many things that I want to do to get this word out here to people, to hold on, to keep that hope alive, and to stop child abuse. It's a multifunctional thing. It's got